Dear students, I hope that your HBL has been going on very well. I hope that you had the time to also rest amidst your preparation and your planning for your oral exams. Sorry for taking a while to record this, and I thought that since your oral exam is about to end, I hope that you have a little bit more time to look at gaps in your learning so far. Okay, so before I review the answer key for this, if you're one of the students who have not done your work at all, you know who you are, you have not submitted it, I hope that you spend the time to complete it first before you check the answer, because you really should have exercised some thinking and some question analysis. Try to apply before you copy the answers, because if you are just copying, it may not help you in the long run. Okay, so this answer key here, what I'll show you later is some are suggested by the original marker from these schools, and I've also included in purple some of the answers that you have included, and I wanted to give a little bit more feedback. So I will not go into detail for every single question. I'll just highlight some special things that I've noted as I was marking your paper. Okay, so generally, this question was done well, but I also want to highlight that for some of you, when you are quoting, it's not clear what exactly you're quoting. So you can see from my sample over here, I just want to highlight this. Okay, you will note that, okay, maybe this is not the best color. You would note that it's important for you to show what exactly you are quoting, and you will know whether or not you have explained. Because if you find that for most of your answer, the answer comes from the text itself, you have not explained what close proximity does, or how feeding of birds can be an impact, or how disposing of food poorly can be an impact, that will affect how you can explain clearly. Yeah, so you can see what I've done here is that I've really made sure that when I quote in small amounts. Okay, I don't quote excessively, and I focus more of my attention to the points in black here to show my understanding. So here, it being more territorial, or they associate humans with food, they're being more aggressive, or them being closer to urban area, venturing urban areas, and so on. So for this question here, since it's about crows, right? So you know that crows, we find them in our concrete jungle. It's not so much an animal that we see in for example, nature reserves and all that. When we talk about the problem of crows, right, we always talk about crows in the urban area near hawker centers and so on. So when you write about the answer in purple that you see below, so if many of you address that, you know, we have more deforestation, we are planting more trees, we have more parks, you are not wrong, but it doesn't quite link very clearly to the text. So you say that more people are going into nature reserves to exercise, you know, it doesn't quite show that you understand the context that is given in figure 1.2. It is not wrong, but it's not the most accurate answer either. Okay, so be very mindful when you apply. You also take note of the context and the example that they've given, so your answer is a lot more precise. Okay, let's go on to the next question. For this here, you have two different sources. Now, I want to highlight that while this context given to you is a live screening of National Day Parade, it could be a live screening of a movie, it can live screening of a football match, so you can also interpret this as a possible it can possibly result in negative sense of place. That's also okay. Alright, so the explanation must be logical. Okay, then for this here, I think if you're talking about positive sense of place, it's a lot easier to explain. So I've shown you here again, I'm making reference to different parts of the figure 1.3, figure 1.4. I also show you how I quote very briefly and how I explain. So my explanation, I try to write in paragraphs like this so that it makes it very clear that I'm not repeating and I'm not giving the same answers again and again. Because for sense of place questions, it's a bit more abstract, it feels a little bit more intangible, it's very hard to make each point sound unique. Okay, so it's very important that when you write, you are clear that every single point you're talking about is different. So for example, what is the key thing that I've highlighted here? The key thing that I've highlighted here, let me show you the point. Firstly is strengthening of ties. Okay, because of mingling. Then maybe it can be something like new memories, add meaning. And then the third one is memorable space, right? So the space have additional meaning. So sometimes it is a bit difficult to try to layer on a different point. So it's good that you are familiar with the different concepts. okay, so that you're better able to explain. So you'll see that for sense of place, sometimes it can be a bit more challenging, so I really want you to be familiar with the concepts here. Next one that I want to show you here is about how it shows environmental and social sustainability. Generally, students are able to address this well, but I also want to highlight again one key thing I want you to take away from this exercise is when you are quoting, you quote in a very succinct way. So you can see my quotes here are very short in yellow, and I also want to highlight that some of you also mentioned that the social sustainability is achieved when in this process of taking things, taking donated items, right, it also helps the lower income families to obtain things that they may need and people may not want. Okay, so here you can also say that it's a form of social sustainability. It can also be a situation where people talk about environmental issues, they find solutions together, this builds stronger relationship, they feedback to the MP. Well, this guy used to be an MP, ex-MP. Okay, so this here helps them to generate solutions, reduces conflict, builds greater relationship with each other. So for these questions, quite open to interpretation as long as it is logical and answering the question. Next question here. This was quite well done. You all had managed to look at the text very, very, very thoroughly, and you have picked up a lot of things that I didn't look into detail in the first place when I had written this answer key quite some time back. So I want to show you how you could possibly quote certain aspects, and you can elaborate on the points by explaining further, because this here asks you whether or not the relationship is positive or negative. So it's important for you to show two-sided view, and many of you were able to do that, but more for the positive part, less of the negative part. Okay, so if I would emphasize, you can read this one, because more of you were not able to talk about how the relationship had been negative in the first place. So also very importantly, when you want to explain, you don't just quote and quote excessively. Alright, so like I said, this is less commonly addressed. Okay, so due to the presence of people, there's soil movement, this shows that there was some level of environmental degradation. So I think one of your friends were able to explain this part very well. I thought that was well done. This here is about the planting of boardwalk. You are trying to make sure that you protect the ecosystem such as this. And the last one here is about how we try to reduce the exposed tree roots, right, by improving on the trails. So this will help to reduce the damages caused. And when you provide a lot more amenities, you provide a lot more trails, you can also tap on the positive cultural ecosystem services. Okay. Now moving on to the next question here. This here is about haze, and then when I want to talk about when you're writing about impacts, I really hope that you can focus more on the direct, immediate impact. Okay, so as far as possible, you try to give short-term impacts rather than extrapolating and talking about very, very, very far long-term impacts. So for example, if a very far long-term impact is perhaps talking about there could be, you know, sickness leading to poor quality of life, not going to school, subsequently they are not able to earn, and that's further on. I do agree that that can happen, but we focus on the more immediate ones first. Okay, so here the question is now this question could be a little bit more precise, I find, when they're talking about impacts on different people. Usually when we see impacts on people, we will look out for social impact first. We can also talk about economic and environmental, but when they talk about people, essentially we look out for social impact first, just to make sure that we address this social aspect. Alright, and when you look at groups of people, you look at the groups that are featured in the text itself, and in this text, the main people that were highlighted were seniors, and classrooms, kindergarten, schools, nursing homes, seniors. So let's focus less on the healthcare workers, focus less on government, focus less on businesses. We focus more on the people who are in the text itself. Alright, so the hazard, I think, quite clear and straightforward. It's the air pollution. While many of you were able to talk about respiratory problems, you were able to talk about sickness, you weren't quite able to describe how this impact came about. Okay, so I find that if I want to get you to focus on some aspects, it would be this. How did this happen? Okay, so this would be important. These two parts would be important. And this is a gap I see in many of your answers. Okay, next part. This question, okay, for me, I find this question a little weird because it says identify the hazard shown in figure 1.4, but it's kind of in the text itself where they show you there's fire hazard, so I feel that this is quite a giveaway. Then the next question they ask, explain causes and impacts. So it should be 2 cause and 2 impacts. So this here you can take out some information from the text itself. Okay, and you do have to explain, so you have to explain a little bit more, and then you can also highlight electrical points. So this is the first cause, this is the first cause, and then impacts, we also want to focus on the social impacts as well. Okay, so I thought I saw some of you mentioning things like delayed rescue because of the cluttered and blocked walkways, very hard to escape, there's a loss of property, and there's a loss of there's a need for repair, which costs a lot of money, very costly to renovate the whole house that had been damaged by fire. So all these are relevant, but I want you to revise this part and make sure you're familiar with how you can explain this, because if the question was phrased slightly differently, with reference to figure 1.4, explain the causes and the health impacts of this hazard, many of you may just write burn, injury, death, but you're not really able to explain further or elaborate further. Okay, so this is one area that you really have to work on. Then for this last part, where you're talking about the ecosystem services, the regulatory ecosystem services, and what provisioning, cultural supporting, and so on, do take note of the preambles that are given, do take note of the headers that are given. So in this case, they're emphasizing the fact that there's a new flood protection system and there's a cycling path. So we focus on these two first, which I think is essential in response to the figure. This here, they're asking you to describe, so you have to elaborate on what you're looking at. Okay, you cannot just quote and you don't explain. So sorry, you cannot quote and you don't elaborate. So here, if you say that, oh, there's regulating ecosystem services, there's flood protection, do pick out something from the text to show that you are making reference to the text, and you're also elaborating why this is a form of regulatory system. So this is an example of how you can do so. And then this here is also another way for you to elaborate further. Okay, and then the next portion, it could be something like, for example, people have cultural ecosystem services, people can do recreational activities, they gain aesthetic experiences, it's a scenic route, they enjoy themselves. So this here is important for you to make links and show your understanding very, very explicitly. Right, so in this case, if let's say you were to talk about having more oxygen, then you have to ask yourself, was this something that is really featured in flood protection and cycling path? Can I see the production of more oxygen by having a wider canal and a cycling path? If I cannot really see that, then maybe this is not the best answer. Right, maybe this is not the best answer. Now, another student, I think, wrote about regulating temperature. Well, I can think so, because you have water bodies, the water bodies do help to cool down the area, but your explanation has to be very, very, very clear, but I would still suggest that you focus more on the flood protection, which is the main focus within text. Okay, but if you are already done with your paper, you don't have any other points, and you have extra time, and you can think of regulating temperature, you just write. Okay, but as far as possible, you want answers to be precise, so that you're not writing answers that are not directly answering the question and not the main focus. Okay, so I hope that all of these have helped you in some way. I will do another video for your next homework, and you can use the video to help you to check on your understanding. Alright, really encourage you to jot down the answers so that it's easier for you to revise and you understand the process, the thought process of how I arrived at these answers. Hope this has been helpful. If there are any questions, please reach out. Thank you.